Assalamualaikum, my name is Binti ABDULLAH, manometric A20A1703. So about the article that have been chosen, which is issue and challenge of Islamic trade and finance faced by Islamic bank in Malaysia. So for the first one, we're talking about the Islamic trade and finance. It's a service provided for export, import, and also other bank services that full range of Sharia compliance product and solutions. So according to the International Trade Finance Corporation (ITFC), the Islamic trade and financing become the main point in helping Malaysia in supporting trade, foster growth, accelerate post-pandemic recovery. Although that they face many hindrances and obstacles, there are hindrances such as political risk, we have a legal risk, currency, foreign exchange risk, financial risk. Sharia issue about operation is Islamic trade financing. So the article also pinpoint out that the issue and challenges mentioned have to be proven with the Islamic banking and finance in Malaysia. It also that the study has provided data and also further information details proof based on the issue and challenge highlighted. So the categories will be elaborated and discussed pertaining more details.
Okay, so let's move to the issue of the article. According to Syed Ali, issues confronting Islamic banking activities in Malaysia on the ITF can be categorized into two categories, which is the first one, the absence of standard written guideline on Islamic trade finance. According to the literature, the lack of regular written norms presented obstacle to the ITF. In Malaysia, there is currently no single standard rule regarding ITF. The distinction between a standard and standardization is compliance, while standardization is important because it aids in the growth of ITF sectors, not just in Malaysia but in globally. ITF is controlled by the same standards as the facilities offered in ITF. However, there are few points worth noting, such as the fact that the standard guideline is incompatible with ITF. Furthermore, the guideline is an international standard that may or may not be compatible with local laws and regulations. Secondly is risk associated to Islamic trade finance. Political risk. The sovereignty of the countries participating in import and export activity is a major source of country or political risk. This could be one of the consequences of political, economic and civic unrest that obstruct trade. As a result of this impasse, the risk of one country freezing the asset and bank account of another country held locally will be transferred. In legal risk, despite the fact that the legal system is well regulated, it is nevertheless one of the dangers that importers and exporters must be aware of in order to comply with the country's regulation. Legal risk in trade can be divided into two categories, fiduciary risk and legal resource risk. Fiduciary risk is related with the possibility of facing legal resource action if the bank breach its fiduciary responsibilities. Second, there is business environment risk, which include legal risks where banks are unable to enforce their commitment due to a weak growth international environment.
Current issue. The first current issue involves the conversion from LC Wakalah to LC Murabaha. When the appointment of an agent is transferred to the customer and the bank enables the conversion in the middle of the transaction. This issue of conversions will occur. The reason for this is what in Wakalah, the bank acts as the customer representative. In other words, this raises a Sharia big concern because the fiqh al-mu'amalat prohibits the execution of two contracts in one transaction. The second current issue is financial crisis. Malaysia, like most other countries, has been through and recovered from multiple financial crises, leaving its current leaders with a wealth of appetite to draw on. Effect of COVID-19 in 2020, the country GDP is shrunk by 5.6%, the most since the Asian financial crisis. Even though Malaysia's economy has evolved over time, making a straight comparison difficult. Expert climate change believe the current scenario is the country's greatest economic crisis in modern history.
Present about current issue of risk associated to Islamic trade finance. That current issue is at a time when our country is facing an epidemic of coronavirus. The government forbade its citizens to engage in business and trade activities for a while. This makes the Malaysian economy decline and affects Malaysia's Islamic trade as well. This shows that this political risk is a relatively large risk in Islamic trade finance due to government intervention. Next, there are other risks in Islamic trade finance. including the foreign interest rate. This foreign interest rate is also one of the risks that greatly affect Islamic trade finance. As an example can be given, in 2022, there was a war between Russia and Ukraine. The war had a huge impact on Malaysia, as Malaysia had trade relations with Ukraine and Russia. The Malaysian ringgit has depreciated sharply to nearly 4.2000 against the strengthening United States dollar as changes in global markets responded to news that region. That's all from me and thank you.
Alright, next. In this part, I want to talk about the new finding or significant information to the fields of Islamic finance and banking system. There are many new findings that we found in this article. An important fact that will aid in the advancement of finance and Islamic banking system. The first point is business genius and ability to remain robust. This is Islamic bank ability to stay stable and relevant in the face of changing local and global requirements. It is because the scope is large and tied to the technology that will rapidly evolving field in the others area. As a result, Islamic bank consider to investing in the blockchain or smart contract to speed up the ITF process trustworthy and keep with the technology advance that will meet the local and global demand. For second finding is the having a previous report on ITF for future reference in conquering any challenge. This is because everything may be done in the technological advancement. The question here, how well equipped Malaysia to deal with all the unexpected conditions that might hinder development ITF in Malaysia. Even if a transaction is a completely manual, it still involves technology. So more debate is needed to examine the relevant concern in order to determine whether they are relevant in the Malaysian context. Then ITF by the Islamic Bank is used to finance locals and the international trade. ITF involved from trade financing and has become a key structure in banking and finance business. This is not just in Malaysia but around the world have adopted Islamic banking and finance. So by adopting the new tactic and the implementation of various transformational initiatives, the international trade finance has a boost trade finance performance.
Alright, now I will continue about this point. The finding is not only focused on international characteristics, but they are also relevant to the Malaysian context, such as political factors that influence trade deals. The financial industry is more vulnerable to political risk, which is common across the world. According to Muhammad Siddiq and Hanif 2013, political risk includes a variety of factors such as investment profile, corruption, democratic accountability, and more. As a result, additional attention is required because it may inevitably have an influence on the growth of the ITF. In addition, in terms of concept, Islamic finance and trade finance are very similar. Islamic finance emphasizes general asset and aims to boost the real economy. Islamic finance main instruments, which include financing taxable assets, are directly applicable to international trade. The prohibition on paying or receiving riba, which is considered to mean all forms of interest, is a major principle of Islamic finance. So the prohibition of interest stems from the idea that money is merely a vehicle of commerce and not a commodity in and of itself. Thus, according World Bank 2015, it said that any return must be linked to an asset or joint venture involvement and risk-taking, such as partnership. Furthermore, the ITF has a significant role to play in supporting trade, fostering growth, and accelerating post-pandemic recovery, as enhancing ITF can help other organizations of Islamic countries or known as OIC member countries, as well as the worldwide Islamic finance industry. Did you know Malaysia is a leader in international trade? Also, Malaysia is the 7th largest economy and the 3rd largest exporter and importer, despite ranked at 50 in population. Moreover, Malaysia might potentially play a prominent role in the global ITF with strategic backing and enabling policies.
For the next slide is application.
These implications are related with the society. First is foreign exchange rate. Current rate fluctuation may have a significant impact on various market investment power. At the oil supplier at SITI, it had to reduce the price of the oil because in the US it gained the high productions. Bank Negara did not put the real measure and did not impose capital control on country because the exchange rate system can be accessed the country in adjustability to fluctuation in ringgit value. Financial crisis is a crucial phenomenon that giving a big implication to globally. The real sector of economy begin to suffer the negative consequence of the crisis after a short time lag. Weak stock price, housing market downturn, and the net constructionary impact the ringgit devaluation or combination to create a negative effect, resulting in a drop domestic demand. As a result, domestic oriental business such as construction and service were very bad impact. And the last one is the Sharia issue on trade finance. On this section, it explores the Sharia problems surrounding the use of murabahah contract in Islamic trading financial instruments before moving to buy on thing. For example, the organization may avoid stock filling commodities inventory. However, due of their function as a partnership, Islamic financial institutions are susceptible to commercial risk associated with the ownership of product, which cannot be completely avoided under murabahah contract. They might reduce the danger though establish standard and negotiation terms and conditions.
Next, for the conclusion, the Malaysian Islamic trade financing industry has huge potential and development chances. Hence, with such promising opportunities ahead, all parties involved must work together to improve the current structure and legal and regulatory framework. This is to ensure that future direction of Islamic trade finance development are more clearly defined and detailed, resulting in stronger management system and operations. Lastly, here are some recommendations to overcome these issues. First, the need for additional awareness initiative and customer interaction to encourage consumers to adopt Islamic trade finance. Second, Malaysian Islamic banking must have clear goals and objectives to enhance Islamic trade finance. It is necessary because it will serve as a roadmap for Malaysian Islamic banks to develop successfully as a group rather than as individuals. Next, the Islamic trade finance norms and regulation must be tightened. Plus, Islamic banks in Malaysia must be well equipped to efficiently respond to all current approaches. Lastly, because Islamic trade financing is a big unexplored market, there is lots of possibilities for expansion both locally and globally.